Israel denying the Palestinians the right of return constitutes ethnic cleansing?
Well, the way the argument is usually framed is as follows. So let me try to give a full answer to your question. Some people say the Palestinians fled of their own volition in 1948. However, because they were denied the right to return, it became an ex post facto ethnic cleansing. That is to say, whatever happened in 48, the fact that they were not allowed to return to their homes becomes an after-the-fact ethnic cleansing. Let's take a simple example. In the last war in Lebanon, July through August 2006, as you know, in the northern Galilee, as the missiles came from Hezbollah, about 300,000 Israelis fled their home, right? If they were not allowed to return after battlefield hostilities had ceased, it would be a de facto ethnic cleansing, an ex post facto ethnic cleansing. In this particular case, in my opinion, the issue does not arise because historians acknowledge they were expelled during the war. But even if it were the case that they left of their own volition, like the several 100,000 Israelis in northern Israel, if they were not allowed to return, it would still be an ethnic cleansing, an ex post facto one.
Thank you.
I want to ask you about the role of the United States Congress. With all the facts and the record, which, as you said, is not controversial at all, and many of them, many delegates go there, and they have foreign ministers and so on. Why this high degree of blindness, basically, and almost blind support, which hurts the interest of the United States at large?
Well, I agree with the first part. I'm not sure if I agree with the second. It is, you know, there's a whole controversy about what accounts for U.S. support for Israel. My own view, and it's a complicated topic, or at least it's a time-consuming one, is that when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict, that dimension of the Middle East conflict, I think the argument is convincing. It's basically the lobby. The lobby applies a lot of pressure, and it gets to impose its will. And that's not unusual. I mean, in our society, we have a gun lobby, which also does a lot of things which are harmful to our interests, or at least in my opinion, harmful to our interests. So I think a reasonable argument can be made that the Israel lobby is responsible for U.S. support for the occupation. However, I do not think that a reasonable argument, a credible argument, can be made that the lobby is responsible, for example, for the attack on Iraq in 2003. The claims are made by John Mearsheimer, and Steve Wald in their book, The Israel Lobby. Once you start going there, where fundamental U.S. national interests are at stake, Iraq, Iran, and so forth, no. The American ruling elites are very sober, very clear-headed, and when their interests are at stake, they are not going to be pushed around by a lobby. And the argument, contrary-wise, is simply unconvincing. I'll give you just a couple of examples and then we'll move on. You read the Mearsheimer and Wald book, what do they say? Well, let's start with scratch. Everyone here knows the main architects of the war are Cheney and Rumsfeld. That's not controversial. Bush, he was upstairs with his PlayStation 3. It's Cheney. It's Cheney and Rumsfeld. Now, Cheney and Rumsfeld are not Jewish neoconservatives. I think that's pretty clear also. They don't look the part, they don't talk the part, and they aren't the part. These people speak and look to U.S. national interests as they understand it. So if they're the main architects of the war, how can it be that the Israel lobby forced the war? Well, Mearsheimer and Wald say the second tier, these Jewish neoconservatives, they tricked, they fooled Cheney, people like Libby, Klein, Wolfowitz, and so forth. Now, there are many things you can say about Cheney, and I'll go with you there. A mass murderer, I'll go with you there. A criminal, I'll go with you there. A hooligan, a hoodlum, I'll go with you there. Somebody who you want to be with in the dark alley, I'll go with you there. But gullible? Stupid? No. He's a very smart guy. You don't trick Dick Cheney. No, it doesn't happen. That's not credible. Or take another aspect of the argument. According to Mearsheimer and Wald, the Jewish neoconservatives, they're not moles. They're not hidden agents of the state of Israel. They say the Jewish neoconservatives are right out there broadcasting the fact that they're faithful, their first loyalty is to Israel. They say just look at their records. Okay, here's a question for you. The Jewish neoconservatives go back with Cheney and Rumsfeld, believe it or not, 30 years. When Cheney was Secretary of Defense, Wolfowitz was Deputy Secretary of Defense. Cheney and Rumsfeld, they know the neoconservatives like the back of their hands. They work with them, they socialize with them. So now ask yourself a logical question. If it's true that the Jewish neoconservatives are working for Israel, why do Cheney and Rumsfeld staff all the key positions in the Vice President's office and the Defense Department with agents of a foreign government? Does that make any sense? The problem is when you start looking at their argument piece by piece, stripping away for the moment the huge scholarly apparatus, the thousands of footnotes, and just logically work through the argument, it doesn't make any sense. Though I do think it's true on the local issue of the Israel-Palestine conflict, the occupation and so forth, I do think it's correct to say it's the lobby. Oh, excuse me.
Hi. You asked for dissenters first, and I'm not
Yes.
a dissenter, so I don't want to be misunderstood. But my question is challenging something that you said. So you spoke about unanimous or near unanimous agreement on some important statistics and legal concepts. And I was wondering, you talked about, for instance, the 5-to-1 civilian casualty rate, roughly, of Palestinians to Israelis, and that all organizations pretty much agree on human rights violations and their causes, and that bombs have been indiscriminately shot at Gaza. And I was wondering, do all widespread estimates agree, both Israeli and Palestinian, and how can impartial organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch that aren't associated with either the Israelis or Palestinians, how can they get empirical evidence that makes their assessments of situations more credible?
It's a perfectly fair question. First of all, I don't think we disagree. We agree that we're not talking about Israelis or Palestinians for the moment. We're talking about human rights organizations, a separate category. Though a large number of the human rights organizations which people draw on for information happen to be Israeli. How do they do it? Well, the simple answer is they do it the same way as they do everywhere else in the world. They have trained people who, number one, go to hospitals, check death records, interview people, cross-examine witnesses, exactly how in any other conflict in the world. If you were now to say, well, I don't trust them, you have, in my opinion, two basic problems. Number one, you have the problem of how does it come to pass that there's a consensus among all the organizations, even though they have